Welcome to the Google Simplex channel. So in today's video, we'll be looking at how to implement hexagonal architecture design in Go. So before we get to the video, I'd like to mention a few things. So first thing is, if you are new to the channel and this is the first video you are watching, please make sure you subscribe and also leave a thumbs up on your way out if you like the content of this video. And if you're new to the channel, I'll be watching videos but you haven't subscribed, and also please consider subscribing. Just help me grow the channel. Then the second thing I'd like to mention is hexagonal architecture is kind of an intermediate to advanced design pattern. So if you are a beginner in Go or in programming generally, this video might not be the ideal video for you, because I'll be going through, I won't be like going through the code, I'll just be going through like the folder structures and how I implement all the, like the way the folder is structured and everything that is involved in the whole of hexagonal architecture. Then one more thing I also like to mention is that I have some sources that can help us like understand the hexagonal architecture more. So I'll leave the link to them in this video's description. So the first one is an article on hexagonal architecture here on Medium, written by Pablo Martinez. So I'll leave the link to this article in the video's description. And the second one is a talk by Katzen in GopherCon 2018. So he talked about domain-driven design and hexagonal architecture in Go in more detail. So it's a very good video that you can watch. I'll also leave a link to this video in the video's description, so you can go check it out to understand more about hexagonal architecture. So with that being said, let's get into the video. So the first thing first is, this is my main.go file. So main.go is where everything is coupled together. So before we go into the main.go file and see the whole coupling, I'll first like to talk about the whole overview. So here I have my hexagonal architecture folder, and in my internal I have my adapter, the adapters, the core, and the ports. So in hexagonal architecture, there's a concept of adapters, core, ports, and the core. So the core is basically where all the business logic happens. Then the port, just a brief description. And the port is like an entry into the core. Then the adapters basically are just ways of communicating with the core through the ports by external agents, or ways of the core communicating with external agents through ports. So basically you have two types of ports and adapters. So they are the driving adapters and the ports, and the driven adapters and the ports. So the driving adapters and the ports are the ones that like cause effects in the core, causes the core to do something, while the driven ports and adapters are the ones that the core used to like communicate with external bodies, maybe like a database. So we'll be seeing those two in this video. So the first one I'd like us to go through is basically the port. So the port, we have two ports, HTTP port and database ports. The HTTP port in our case is a driving port, and it is basically what we are going to be using to talk to the core through an HTTP, our HTTP handlers. So when we go to the adapter, there's an adapter for the HTTP, which we connect to this port and we use to communicate with the core. And the second one is the database port. So this one defines all these methods there. So the ports are those interfaces that helps us like determine the particular behavior that we want to effect in the core, or want the core to effect on other external bodies, depending on if the port is a driving port or a driven port. So that's basically, so this is basically how the database port looks like. So we have the create book, the cutoff book, sketchbook by ID, placebook, and listbook by ID. So the scenario here is they're just trying to like do like basic REST operations on a, maybe like, for those as we are working like, maybe we are creating like a bookstore app that does like basic food operations. So that is what we have in our port folder. Then our adapters folder, or let me go into the core folder first. So in the core here is where all the business logic happens, and it is like loosely detached from the whole application. So if you read the article, there's a place that they mentioned that the core is kind of technology agnostic. So that's the whole idea of hexagonal architecture, to like have components that are loosely coupled for easy maintainability and also readability. So this is the whole. So in our core, the first folder we have is the domain. So the main thing that is doing all the work is the processor. But for the processor, I just want us to like check other folders that we have and what they are doing. So we have the domain folder, which holds the DTO and the entity. So this DTO is just domain transfer objects. So the DTOs are just what we use to like get the JSON payload from the front end. So we have the create book DTO to create a book, and we have the update book DTO to update a book. And we have the entity. So the entity is basically just the book. So in this book here, we also have the name and the author, which is basically in the create book detail. But we have other fields like the ID, which will be the ID in database in MongoDB, then the creator downtime and the updated downtime. And that is basically the first folder we have in our core. Then the next folder we have is the helper folder. So the helper folder is just like your normal helper. So it's kind of like a general idea to keep your helpers in your core. So the first helper we have is our env helper. So this just helps us load our env file, which is this app.m that I have here. Then I have my mapper. So this my mapper just helps me, like once the book DTO gets the name and the author from the JSON payload from the front end, it just helps me add the ID, then the created on and the updated on. So that's what my mapper does. So when we get into the code, we'll see how that happens. Then I have a response helper, so I'm just creating a type response. So just help me like this. So this is the structure of the response I want to be given to the front end. So instead of me having to like return like a map of string to empty interface anytime I want to give a response, I'm just creating a response type. So I can use this to like give the response to the front end. So when we get to the code, we'll see how that works. So after that, the next folder we have is the middleware folder. So the middleware folder, I have just one middleware, which is the JSON middleware. So just help me write the contents type of the response writer to application JSON. That is what it just does. Then the next one, which is the most important folder, is the processor folder. So yeah, this holds the processor. So this processor basically is where the whole magic in the core happens. So it does all the whole magic of the creating the book, the getting the book, the updating the book, and deleting the book. So here in the create book, this is where I'm using my mapper right here in my helper, my map helper. So this is my mapper here. This map creates book DTO to book. So I'm just passing in the DTO here when I'm creating the book. I'm passing in the DTO, and it's going to help me add the ID, the updated runtime, and the created runtime. It's going to help me add this with the book. Then I'll just use the database port from there to create the book. Then getBook also does the same thing, just calls database port and creates the book. So if you look at here in my processor, it has a dependency on database port. Remember, database port is a driven port, so it helps the core to communicate with database through the database adapter. Now create a book in database, get a book, update a book, or delete a book. So that's basically what's just happening in the processor. So that's all for the core. Then the adapters, which is the last one I'll be looking at. So like I said earlier, the adapters are just agents that helps us communicate with the core through the port, or agents that helps the core communicate with external body through the port, also depending on if the port is a driven port or a driving port. That is basically what the adapters are. So we have two adapters. We have database adapter and DHCP adapter. So DHCP adapter in this case is a driving adapter. So it drives some action in the core through the HTTP ports. So if you look at it here, it has a dependency on the HTTP ports. So with that, it just drives the create book action for creating a book, gets book by ID for getting a book, can get all books, then updates book and deletes book. And database adapter also helps the core to effect some changes in the database by calling. So if you look, database adapter has it has a dependency on the collection I want to be talking to in MongoDB. So it just uses the so it communicates. So the core uses the database adapter to communicate to the database collection. So which is also does basically operations I want to create, want to make, which are the create book, the get book by ID, get all books, and so on and so forth. So the general flow of the whole thing is that, and one more adapter we have actually the route. So this one is kind of like an helping adapter. So what this does just is just as one function that just registers our route for us. So I'm using Gucci as my routing package because it helps me like easily get these URL parameters. So I'll also leave a link. So this is the documentation for Gucci over here. So I'll leave a link to this GitHub on the in the video's description, so you can check it out. The documentation is pretty comprehensive and straightforward, and it's like one of the easiest routers to use out there for Go. So you can just check it out later on. So it will just help me like map my routes to the handler functions. So basically the whole flow is that for my route I'll go to my handler functions, and my handler functions are actually my HTTP adapter here. So my HTTP adapter here, so this has a dependency on the HTTP port, and remember the HTTP port has all the methods create book, update book. So if I come back to my port here, the HTTP port has all these methods create book, get all books, get book by ID. So what the adapter does is that once the request comes in, it gets the request body, then it decodes it. Once it decodes it, then it will just call, use the HTTP port to communicate with the core and tell the core, oh, we want to create a book, so just create the book for us. Once it creates the book, so in the core, that one comes into the core, and that is in the processor. So the processor gets the response from the HTTP adapter. Okay, it's time for us to create a book. Then to create the book, for this case that we're creating a book, we need to like map something, which is basically the ID, the updated runtime, and the created runtime. That's what this helper does. That's something that you are connecting with an external agent, say like you are doing some kind of like Redis messaging also, or something else. Everything happens in the processor, it doesn't go out of the processor. So after that, the processor maps creates the book from using the DTO. Then it does calls database port, which is basically this here, and it will create the book, and that goes into our database adapter through the database adapter, and database adapter has a dependency on the collection. So through the database adapter, we are communicating with the database through the collection. So to just create the book. So these are the database operations: insert book, insert one, that is to create a book, then get a book by ID, then get all books, then update book, then delete book. So like I mentioned earlier, this is not like a step-by-step coding process. So I won't be showing you all the code. So I'm guessing if you're watching this video, you are familiar with basic code operations with Go and MongoDB, and also you are familiar with struct and interfaces. That's why I gave the disclaimer at the beginning that it's a little bit of intermediate to advanced topic. So that is basically the whole flow. So then the main.go file, which is the final file we'll be looking at before we run the code and see it in action. So this is where all the connection will happen. So the first thing is I'm using my helper to load my environmental variables. So after I load my environmental variables, I'm creating a database collection. Then I'm passing it as a dependency into the database adapter, because it's the adapter that I want to use to communicate with the database, and that's as a dependency in database collection, because that's how it's going to the database to like create the book, update the book, delete the book, get all the books, and so on and so forth. Then database adapter, we're passing that into our processor, because the processor has a dependency. Remember, the processor is at the core, so the core has to talk with database, and it talks with database through database adapter. So we are passing it into this processor to tell their core that this is the dependency you need to talk with database, which is the database adapter through the database port. So if you come back to our new processor back in our port here, so this is it here. So we have a dependency of database port through the database adapter. So that is basically it. Then once we have a processor, we'll just pass that into our HTTP adapter. So our HTTP adapter in this case also has a dependency on the HTTP ports, which is basically what we're going to use to communicate with the core and tell the core things to do. And that core is basically in the processor here. So that is it here. So that is just the whole flow. And after we get our HTTP adapter, we'll pass that into our setup router, which helps us to just register our routes based on the handlers that are defined by the HTTP adapter, which are all these handler functions here. So if we use our HTTP adapter here, these handler functions: create book, um, get book by ID, and get all books, update book, and so on and so forth. So not to worry, I know I'm going a little bit fast, but I'll leave the link. I'll upload this particular project to GitHub, and I'll leave a link in this video description, so you can check it out later and see how the whole code is structured, and try to like follow it and understand the whole thing, because I know I'm going a little bit fast. So because I don't want this video to be too long. So that's basically the whole thing. So let's run the code and see it in action. So I'll just run the code. So basically I have the code running. So I have Postman open, and I've already kind of opened all the browse down already, and I have my database open. So I'm using database go code snippets collection books, and that basically has been defined in my environmental variables file here. So database go code snippets collection books. So that is it there. So the first route is create book. So create book is API create book, which is this here, and the payload is carries is a create book details. So if I come to create book here, it needs a create book detail which has two fields, just the name and the author. So I'll give it a name, Othello, and the author William Shakespeare. So I'll send this request. So yeah, it's giving me the book ID and the success message, which is true. So the reason for that is that if I come back to my database here, right here, so when I'm creating the book, what I'm just simply returning is the book ID and a nil. Oh, not here. Here, create book. So I'm returning the book ID and a nil error. So that book ID is bubbled up into the processor, which is what I'm basically returning here. So I'm returning database create book. Remember, this is return an entry types and an error. So here it's returning the ID also and a nil error. Then that one is bubbled through into our HTTP adapter here, which is gotten here, right here, book ID and error. So once I have those two, I'll just use my I'll just decode it into the response body, and I'm using helper response. So this response is what I defined earlier in my helpers right here, in my response helper here. The type response, so I can just simply use that right here. So just give a response to the front end, which is the source message to be true and the book ID. So that's basically it, and that's how the whole flow works. So that's it. So I've created the book. So I come to my database and refresh it now. I have my book created. Then the next one is so let me just create one more book. So let me create let's say rich dad poor dad, rich dad for that. And this one is by Robert Kiyosaki. So the book has been created. So if I load my database, I have it. And I can create some more book. Let me just create one more book. Say Principles by Ray Diallo. I can create that also. So I have that here also. So that's the first one. The second one is get a book by the ID. So I need a book ID. So I can just simply copy the ID of one of these books. Let me get straight for that. I'll just copy this ID, paste it here, and I'll guess the book. So I have the book. This is the book here, and it's giving me a success message to be true. And this is the book basically. Then the next one is get all books. So this one is just a get. I can just issue a send to this to get me all the books I have in my database. So I have 3 books. I have Othello by William Shakespeare, Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and Principles by Ray Diallo. Then the next one is update a book by the ID. So I'll just pick let me pick Principles. This is the idea of the book I want to update. I don't. It is not really. It is not a real scenario to actually update a book's name and an author. But just for the sake of this video, I'll just change the name to, let's see, what other book have I read? Okay, let me do 48 Laws of Power. 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. So send that. So formally we are having Dialog Principles. So if I refresh it, it becomes 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. Then the last endpoint is just to delete books. So remember, I have all that registered in my route here. So I just had to just to make the video faster. So I have everything registered. My updates will get all books and everything. So I'll just delete. Which book should I delete? Let me delete the first one, Othello by William Shakespeare. So let me just delete this by the ID. So delete the book. Send the request. So it returns me the ID of the deleted book, which is this ID here. So the book has been deleted successfully. So if I refresh my database, I shouldn't be having Othello by William Shakespeare anymore. So I don't have that anymore. I only have my Rich Dad Poor Dad and 48 Laws of Power. That's a bit for this video. So I would also like to mention again before I end the video that if you're new to the channel and you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you like the content of this video, leave a thumbs up on your way out. And if you're not new to the channel, if you're watching videos and you haven't subscribed, I really appreciate it if you can just hit the subscribe button. Don't take anything, just hit the red button below, and also put on post notification for all notifications. So when I release new videos, you'll be the first to be notified, both for those of us that have been watching videos on this channel and those of us that are new to the channel. And also leave a thumbs up if you like the content of the video. With that, I'll be ending the video. Cheers, see you in the next video.